Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Taurus, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of April. I hope you are well. Just get my hair out of there. Do I have anything to tell you? No. If the reading resonates, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. There is a link down in the description box that will take you to that. Obviously, if you support me on Patreon, you get access to that for no extra cost. Now, let's see what is going on with you, Taurus. Can I have 3 cards for Taurus? Wow, that one flew out. In your recent past, we have the Hermit. That's the card of Virgo in the Major Arcana. And I think, understandably, given your last reading, current energy, please. We have the Moon, Cancer energy. And what's coming towards Taurus, please? Ooh, what have we got here? King of Wands. That's Leo energy. What do we have down here? 5 of Swords, 9 of Swords, the Sun. There. Not worried about that, not at all, Taurus, so don't you worry about it either. Let's just get the clarifying deck. Oh, we're going to go with the Wild Unknown. Let's give that a shuffle. So, where's the Hermit here for Taurus, please? Oh, there we are. Ace of Wands. There's the Hermit here for Taurus. Ooh, Wheel of Fortune and 10 of Cups. Why is the Moon here, please? We have the Strength card. More Leo energy. Moon. We also have the Hermit again. And we have the Father of Cups, King of Cups, but it's come out in reverse. Tell me about the King of Wands, please. We have the 10 of Pentacles and we have the Ace of Swords. This is glorious. Even with this 5 of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck, this is really, really good, Taurus. And I do feel like this is a really strong continuation of what we've seen, what we've been exploring in your last 2 readings. Behind that, we have the Knight of Pentacles, Virgo energy. And then we have the World, which is, it has all 4 of the fixed signs. It represents all 4 of the fixed signs. So Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo. And there you are, as the King of Pentacles sat behind it. Now, the reason that I'm not concerned about these cards that appear on the face of it to be very negative, such as the 5 of Pentacles and the 5 of Swords and the 9 of Swords, is because I honestly was kind of expecting them. We saw, I think last time that there was a disappointment that was coming, and it was necessary for you to bounce off that disappointment, to reorient yourself almost like 90 degrees towards what it is that was actually meant for you rather than what you thought was meant for you. And so, the energy of these two 5 cards here, which is chaotic, I think, restless at best, but certainly chaotic, more usually. It talks about a great deal of instability, right? And that's obviously something that Tauruses don't enjoy very much. Who does really? I mean, some signs do, but Taurus, as fixed Earth, you are about the least movable sign that there is. Right? You try pushing over a bull and see where it gets you, right? But if the ground beneath you were to tremble and quake, then that might be the thing that would knock you off the perch, right? But it's about a reorientation. And so there is here disappointment in something not working out the way that you had hoped, but this energy of kind of plodding on and going, right, okay, well, that hurt, that wounded me, but I'm going to keep going, is the thing that is taking you towards the end of this cycle. It's almost like this event, whatever it was, whether it was huge or whether it was relatively minor but just a little bit disappointing, whichever way it occurs for you, it was the catalyst for the end. And a catalyst in you helping you find yourself properly, which is no small thing, Taurus, given the amount of work that you've done on yourself recently. Maybe you've realized that you had invested a lot in the idea of something happening and now it's not happened. You're like, well, what do I do now? I'm not really sure what my next move is. And in quintessential Taurus or earth sign fashion at least anyway, you're kind of going, right, well, I'll just keep plodding on, see where it goes. The thing is, you're plodding on in a different direction now, slightly different. There's an altered trajectory. And although this may have given you considerable concern, a bit of anxiety, a little bit of worry, you just feel like things have been shaken up. There's the sun. You are headed now on a trajectory that takes you towards something extremely positive, that you cannot ignore. Cannot ignore the sun when it appears. And the World card too. I mean, the World is a card of celebration, actually. I mean, sometimes things coming to an end don't feel particularly celebratory, but when it's the end of a cycle, in time, you can look back and say, oof, I'm so glad that I went this way instead. Just because it's not obvious to you now, it doesn't mean that it's not a good thing. It's about keeping the faith, I guess, as much as anything else. I need something to fiddle with my lighter, right? So, we have the Hermit card here. It's Virgo energy, your sister fire sign. Yeah. Sister earth sign. And it's quite interesting because in the Hermit card, usually we've got an old man who's kind of bent over, and he's on the pursuit of wisdom, right? And within his lamp, he has the star. So it's like he has his hopes and his dreams and everything in this thing, and he's using this to guide his way. It's very healing. I mean, you can see that being a healing journey too, right? But in the Crow Tarot, the star is actually located outside of the lamp. Look at it, it's just in there, in the corner. And so what you had hoped and dreamed for no longer sits inside something that you have a hold of. It's kind of like it's drifted off, and we try and catch a star. Well, that's probably a really bad idea, because I'm just thinking from a physics point of view, trying to catch a star would be a terrible thing to do. But it's elusive, right? Now you tried to catch it and it slipped through your fingers. Whether it's because as soon as you got there you realised that it actually wasn't what you wanted at all, or whether it just faded out of the equation, it took itself out of the equation. And we've got here all of these beautifully positive cards, and I feel like these were what you invested in this. So we have the Ace of Wands here. There was passion, and there was drive, and there was desire for a thing, and there was a preparedness to do something differently. I mean, maybe you were prepared to thoroughly uproot yourself and live differently. Actually, it's that living differently feeling that I've got here. But it's here with the Wheel of Fortune and the Ten of Cups. Like, it felt like it should be everything that would make you happy, and that you should be everything that made this situation happy, as it were, in as much as you can make a situation happy. But you know what I mean? Like, that it was a confluence of events and personalities and characters and souls and minds and things and stuff that was just going to make everybody happy. But this Wheel of Fortune turned the wheel at the last moment, and suddenly none of those things were true anymore. It all seems so straightforward, and suddenly it's not. And you could understand why there would be a great deal of disappointment associated with that feeling. Back to this Five of Pentacles down here, like that would be a little bit galling. But I love this Wheel of Fortune, because in all other cards, the Wheel of Fortune is almost always depicted as a wheel, right? And it's got very clean lines, it's very obviously circular, and there's an obvious route of movement around it. But in the Wheel of Fortune, it's all over the shop. It's like a dream catcher, a dream catcher that's been kind of left out in the wind for a while. And so whilst there is still a pattern in here that you can discern, you can follow the colours of the threads, or you can follow the shapes. It's quite difficult to predict ahead of the point where you hit the next turn where it is that you're going to go. See what I mean? Something about the light. So where you were expecting that, actually you've got this, but these threads still nevertheless exist, and the colours still exist. But maybe it's time for you to consider changing direction, or obviously you're changing direction. The universe has kind of gently twisted you and being like, not this way, you need to go another way. I mean, the other thing that the Wheel of Fortune talks about, as well as being a 10, so it kind of, it in some ways indicates completion, because 10s do indicate completion in the tarot, but it's not the end, obviously, because you've got another 11 cards. 11 cards in the major arcana. So it's like, well, it's not the end because I'm not at the world card yet, although we have seen the world card. It's more like a kind of save point in a game, and it's like, well, wherever you go from this point on, you know, what you have learned will take you back to this point, not to an earlier point where things were very difficult and you were, you know, incredibly anxious and you were overthinking and things like that. It's just like, no, it's coming back a little bit each time, but never going back to where you were before, right? It's growth, it's progression. And although it's not gone the way that you anticipated, and you know, I think the Taurians like things to be in straight lines, nevertheless, stuff is still happening here. And the message is to just kind of, where you can, roll with this as it is at the moment, because, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? So the next card that you've got is the Moon. Now, the Moon, just like the Hermit for me, is a card that speaks about the internal space. I mean, sometimes it can talk about those things that are hidden from you right now, outside of you. So things that you are not aware of at this point. But it's also a card that speaks about illusion and confusion, and maybe in your current state you are slightly confused as to why this thing didn't work out the way that it was supposed to, the way in your head it had gone in nice neat straight lines, and then suddenly it hasn't. You know, you got to the end of this particular line and it went off in an entirely different direction. More than that, it took you away from the other lines that you were expecting to form part of this equation with you. But it speaks about the subconscious to me very, very strongly, right? If the sun is consciousness, and it is for me, then the Moon becomes the other part of the equation. It becomes the subconscious, the non-conscious, the bits that you are not aware of about yourself. And I do feel like you are learning a lot right now as you are in this kind of processing phase where you're dealing with what has disappointed you and why you feel the way that you do, like perhaps why you've taken it to heart so much, or perhaps why you haven't. You know, both of these things are possible, because we've got the Strength card here indicating a huge level of internal growth. Now, whether this internal growth, like I said, is as a result of the processing that you're doing, or whether the huge growth is what you've just suddenly noticed about yourself. Like, you know, had this happened 2 years ago, I you know, might not have been able to get my head off the pillow for 3 days. You know, perhaps I would have indulged in all sorts of comfort behaviours, and I haven't done all of those things. You know, I'm actually just looking forward to the future and then trying to work out what the lesson was in this experience that I've just had. You know, Hermit again, really doubling down on the internal search for answers. But maybe there's just been a huge growth in the way that you look for insight in things. You know, there's a very fine line between overthinking and deep thought, I think. And I think the difference is the emotional, the level of emotion that's involved within it, possibly. I mean, it could be other things too. There's nothing wrong with being a thinker. There's nothing wrong with being a deep thinker, and there's nothing wrong with looking for patterns in things and trying to understand things. It's when that becomes very limited, or it becomes very self-critical, where you turn it within and start using that as a stick to beat yourself with. And I don't feel like you're doing that at all, Taurus. And so there is the growth. Whether you've noticed it, whether you've not noticed it, or whether it's in the process of coming right now. Let's get another card. I also want to pull another card for that and see what's going on, because it does feel like it's a time of deep contemplation, and perhaps it's a card of a time of realizing what it is that you don't know. Maybe things that you had assumed up until this point, and now suddenly you realise that that was an assumption. You just kind of filled in a gap with an assumption without really finding out whether that was correct or not before you moved. You know, you can see this playing out in all sorts of ways. Tell me about the Hermit card, please. Oh, fuck. We've got the Two of Cups. Now, for some of you, this does revolve around another person. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. This could be a business partnership as well. It could just be a friendship. It could be about the way that maybe you thought somebody had your back and they didn't, or maybe you thought someone would expect you to have their back and they don't. You know, that sort of thing. But notice that the Wheel of Fortune has just appeared at the bottom of the deck there. Let's just shuffle it back in. Tell me about this Hermit card. Let's see. Knight of Swords. Yeah, I feel like on something you rushed in. And it didn't feel like it was rushing in when you did it. It felt like it was just an expression of excitement and desire for the new here. And yes, I'm ready for this, and this is all wonderful. But on reflection now, you're looking back and I kind of rushed into that a little bit. I didn't feel like it at the time, but I did. There's that Gemini energy headed towards that. Relationship, yeah. We've got the Chariot card. With the Four of Swords underneath here, and I like that. I like the fact that that's here, because that is about that stepping back and looking at the situation, right? You are in reflective mode at the moment. Like I said, you're looking for the answers within yourself, maybe looking for the lesson for sure. But I feel like this uncharacteristic rush that there was towards someone else or to another situation is what is being examined by you at this point. You know, it's almost like you ran at something so fast that you didn't give yourself time to really contemplate it. One assumes, because you had assumed that you'd done enough thinking beforehand, you know, it's like, right, I've covered every base, I've thought about every eventuality, now I can just go for it. And suddenly, when it didn't turn out the way that you planned, you're like, well, okay, now I see now why it would never have worked out the way that I'd planned, because I had not taken into account this or this or that or the other, you know. And then, or maybe I got there and it's actually not at all what I thought it would be, because where the gaps in my knowledge were, I filled it with hope. I filled it with a lot of expectation. Ooh, have we had a bit of a lesson in expectation here, Taurus? I think possibly we have, because the Knight of Cups, not the Knight of Cups, the King of Cups here, remember, turned up in the reverse. And it does feel like there was some sort of rejection, there was some sort of rebuttal, you know, whether you ended up rejecting something or whether something rejected you, someone rejected you. It doesn't really matter thematically. The lesson is the same. And we have here the Chariot. It's like it's a back to the drawing board, you know, regrouping almost. Certainly. Oh, shit. Let me see that card underneath there. There's a lot of processing going on. Tell me about this Father of Cups in reverse, please. Thank you. Where the fuck? Oh, Nine of Cups. Now, this is the Hope card, it's the Wish card, but it is also a card of your emotions, and I think that all of the interpretations of this card really hold true, particularly with the Queen of Swords under the bottom of the deck here. So, you know, what you are learning about yourself and what you are taking control of, right, what you're very determined about is sorting out your personal happiness, right, and making sure that you have all of the information that you need to make decisions moving forwards, but that you're also a little bit more discerning, because I think some of you got kind of carried away with your own emotions towards this. And there's this big energy of just kind of regrouping, coming back, thinking about it again, looking for the lesson. Like I said, we have underneath here, we've got the Five of Cups underneath there. It's another 5 card, and again, I'm not actually concerned about seeing these here because it's that instability. Now remember, if you're going to grow at all, you need to be pushed out of your comfort zone, and the comfort zone is something that Taurus is like. Well, all fixed signs, you know, they're kind of like smoked dragon over the gold, you know, like their comfort zone is something that they protect because it takes them, you know, it's taken a lot of investment to make something so secure within inside themselves or outside of themselves, you know. Immutable signs, for example, care a little less about that, and they'll want to move around a little bit more freely, but that's why we're so solid, is because we take the time to invest in things and make sure that everything, that the foundation is solid before we move on. And our comfort zone plays a huge part in that. And the only way that we will ever actually really exit our comfort zone generally is when we are made uncomfortable. So what has been made uncomfortable for you during this recent past time here that has involved rejection or rejecting of an idea or a situation or even people, has brought you back to the drawing board, and now you're thinking clearly about this. I do think that you're thinking much more clearly about it. I think that in reflection, like I said, you can see that you rushed into a situation and now it's like, okay. Like, I don't feel like you're kicking yourself really hard. I feel like you're a little bit hurt. I feel like there's a little bit of wounding there, but the way that you are dealing with it now is so different to how you would have dealt with it in the past. And this back to the drawing board energy is like, well, what is right for me? This has got to be the most important thing. What is right for me? And when we move into April for you, I think that you work out exactly what is right for you. We've got this Leo card here speaking about action, although the one suit for me is about living, about lived experience sometimes actually, but it's doing. It's a very active card. I would say the King of Swords is the King of Wands is the most outwardly active character archetype, if you will, in the hierarchy of any of the elements. And we've got here the Ten of Pentacles and the Ace of Swords, right? This is kind of huge. We'll start with the Ten of Swords first. Ten of Swords. I'll fucking mix the cards up. Why don't you? Ace of Pentacles, Ten of Swords. It's neither of those things. We'll start with the Ace of Swords. The Ace of Swords, when it comes down to it, is the truth. But it is our discovery of the truth, right? It can be a change in the way that we see things. Remember that the sword suit is all about the mind. It's about logic and it's about reason and it's about rationality, but ultimately it's about the truth. And so this can be an epiphany, right? That light bulb moment, which I think is coming for all of you actually, particularly with regard to this. Now, the Ten of Pentacles can be lots of things. It can be money, it can be complete, material fulfillment. But it's so much more than that. There's a huge shift coming for you here. And not least, it's the shift from the linear to the circular. Look at that. So where you perceived everything as running in straight lines, actually they run in circles, and it's like this huge light bulb moment for you. This could be to do with your patterning, and certainly conditioning, to do certain patterns, and certainly with the Ten of Pentacles, which speaks about security and stability, material or otherwise. You could see how perhaps you fell into something because you were looking for this when actually it was in here all the time. Or realizing that the greatest strength that we have is to be able to break those patterns when they appear. And we've talked about this a lot, Taurus. So whether you're on the outside kind of moving in, or whether you're on the inside and moving out, and as I speak, I feel like it's the latter here. we've got this huge light bulb moment happening for you in April. And it's like, this is how I can get what it is that I want. Right? Now, maybe that's about a shift in you and the way that you do things, but I actually feel like it's much more than that. I feel like there's something tangible going on here, even though at the same time I do see these pentacles sometimes as energetic currency. So anything that you can invest becomes a pentacle, and that can be your money, but it can also be your time and your care and your effort and your love, where attention goes, energy flows, all that sort of thing. And it's like, maybe I've been putting my energy in the wrong place. My attention has been over here when actually what is for me is over here. It's like, bingo. And then we've got some action occurring off the top of it, right? You know exactly what to do to get what you want here. And it's all coming from the right place, because you spent this time going back to the drawing board. And whether that is actually spending the time with yourself to learn what hole you were trying to fill with what you went for before, and it didn't work out, and do you need to fill that hole with something else outside? No, well, you don't, right? So it's about what's going on inside instead, because you spent that time there contemplating everything to do with yourself, bringing yourself back into alignment. I mean, maybe it's even, managing expectations. That's a huge one. I'm always prattling on to my children. Expectations are premeditated disappointments, and is that not what has happened here? Possibly it is. So where can you lose the expectations, and where can you actually just work on bringing value into your life, right? With no expectation. April seems a really amazing month for you in working through that. And again, this is one of the reasons why I'm really not concerned about this Five of Swords and Nine of Swords coupling that we see at the bottom of the Crow Tarot here, because this is you realizing where your thought patterns led you astray, right? They made everything go askew, and how it resulted in disappointments. We have premeditated disappointment going on here, right? But that experience takes you to the sun, which is actually where you always wanted to go. So what you've had is you've navigated something that's been, challenging, certainly a little challenging, and just like I was saying, you kind of pinged off this, and you've realigned with where you were supposed to go. The fact that the Wheel of Fortune is here in this reading, and that is that teaching moment for you. It's the way that I see it. It's almost like you could not have got here without this. And April suddenly seems full of opportunities for you that were not obvious in March. Now, whether you are pulling those opportunities towards you, or whether those opportunities were always there, but for some reason perhaps you didn't feel like you could go for them. We talked about this quite a lot last month. We've got it going on here in March, and we have got March in April, and we have got an awful lot of energy being put into something, somewhere, something. It could be that you have a new idea about something, but I feel like it's more like putting all the dots together, and the scales falling from your eyes, and you're like, I can totally do this thing, and I didn't even think about it. And whatever this disappointment was that you have just navigated suddenly sort of falls by the wayside, and you're like, this is brilliant, actually. I'm going in this direction. Taurus, this is wonderful. This is true learning and growth. It's it's one thing to have the knowledge, right? But it is the application of that knowledge that creates wisdom, and you are becoming a very wise beast indeed. And look at how you've grown. Look at how you've weathered this disappointment, and you're not staying there. There is nothing for you there, so you're not going to stay there. You're going to go somewhere else. You're going to do something else. Like it's freeing you. You're freeing yourself from premeditated expectations, from overinvestment, from all sorts of things. You're quite fleet of foot for such a big creature. Right. I'm going to leave it there. If this has resonated with you and you do want to come across and look at the extended, the description, the link is in the description box. If not to worry. I think April is going to be a great month for you, actually, Taurus. I really do. So know that I love you all very, very much, and I will see you soon.